Diversifying the STEM pipeline was voted our top education priority among the Silicon Valley Leadership Group's 400 plus member companies and our second top priority organization-wide. My name is Amanda Montes, and I'm with the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, and I manage our portfolio for housing and land use and community development issues. And while I would love to talk about how housing impacts educational outcomes for children, that's not what we're talking about today. And we are going to be talking about a very important issue, as I mentioned before. Now, according to recent data from the U.S. Department of Labor and U.S. Census Bureau, examining the 10 largest Silicon Valley companies, just 6% of the workforce identify as Hispanic, 4% of the workforce identify as Black, 25% identify as Asian, and 63% identify as white, respectively. 70% of the workforce at the 10 largest Silicon Valley companies are male. Executives and top managers at these companies reflect even less diversity. 3% identify as Hispanic, 1% identify as Black, 13% identify as Asian, and 83% identify as white. 83% of executives as top managers at the 10 largest Silicon Valley companies are male. So, the leadership group supports policies and programs that support the inclusion of more women, low-income students, and underrepresented groups in STEM careers, because we see this as an ongoing issue that must be addressed. Studies, including the 2014 McKinsey & Company report, find that an economy that is representative of the true diversity that our communities is more competitive and more profitable. A diverse economy is more creative, productive, and innovative. And so I'd like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Allison Scott, Chief Research Officer at the Kapoor Center, who leads a research team aiming to enhance diversity in the tech ecosystem. Dr. Scott, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much, and can everyone hear me? Thank you all for joining this morning. We're very happy to have you and to have this wonderful panel. So this morning we'll be discussing a little bit about the importance of diversifying the STEM and computing pipeline and describe to you some tangible examples of efforts that are being made to diversify the computing pipeline from a variety of different angles. So the conversation will mainly center around increasing access to computing education, and I'll give a couple statistics to follow up on the statistics that you just heard about the workforce, to just outline why we are so interested in focusing on access in the computing education pipeline. So just to set a little context, disparities that we see in the workforce can be traced back to the lack of access and participation in computer science courses at the high school level, undergraduate degree completion in higher education, and then entry and persistence in the workforce. In a study conducted by the Level Playing Field Institute in 2015, we found that across California public schools, just 13% of all California high schools offered AP computer science courses. And of the more than 500,000 high school students enrolled in the 20 largest districts, just 1% were enrolled in any computer science course. And furthermore, what was really interesting and disheartening was that schools with the highest percentage of underrepresented students of color and the highest percentage of low-income students were much, much less likely to offer any computer science course or AP computer science courses. So we found that they actually offered AP computer science at a rate of 12 times lower than their peers. What this results in, the latest data on AP computer science participation, this is kind of an astounding statistic. Of the approximately 1.9 million high school students in California, 53% of which are Latinx and 6% Black, just 1,121 Black and Latinx students combined took the APCS exam in 2015. So what can we do to change these statistics? What can we do to move the needle on diversity in not just the computing pipeline, but ultimately diversity in the entire tech ecosystem? So I would like to start by introducing my esteemed panelists, and they'll say just a couple sentences about who they are and who they represent, and then we will dive right into the panel.
Hello, everyone. I am Nikki Lasley, and I run our education initiatives for Salesforce.org.
Hi, I'm Claire Sherrill, and I lead computer science education for Oakland Unified School District.
Brian Stanley, I'm the Executive Director of the Oakland Public Education Fund.
Thank you very much. So to get us all started, can you each describe your organization and give an overview of the initiatives that you're currently working on related to computer science education?
Okay, so I work for Oakland Unified School District. It's a school district. We have 41,000 students in district-operated schools, and then actually an additional 10,000 in district-operated charters. So this week has been our first week of school. It's actually been a really exciting time for me because I have visited 15 classes that didn't exist last year in computer science. We did a massive expansion. We went from hundreds of kids, so about 780 last year taking computer science, to thousands this year. It's actually really hard to calculate in the first week of school. Any of you who work in school districts probably, yeah. But some of the highlights right now that we're working on is a universal 9th grade computer science in 5 of our 6 largest comprehensive high schools, an expansion of our 10 through 12 career pathways, particularly in computer science, but also in engineering and other STEM fields. And then a huge lift at the middle school level where we're offering 1.0 FTE, so one computer science teacher at 6 of our middle schools, and then 14 out of our 18 middle schools actually have some computer science elective, up from 1 last year. So it's kind of like me being in Disneyland right now. I'm just running around being like, oh my God, there's so many kids, you know. Yeah. Maybe that's how I feel about it. But we've also gone from 3 teachers to 34 teachers. I'm really excited to sort of break down how we've done such massive scale. At the same time, there are still thousands of kids who don't have access to these classes, and so sort of thinking through how we actually make the K-12 continuum, all kids having access by 2020, a reality. Who wants to go?
Thank you. So yes, I am at Salesforce.org. Salesforce.org is a nonprofit social enterprise that focuses on 3 strategic areas: education, mostly focused on STEM, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, STEM, workforce development, and technology and innovation. We have an amazing product that we use and give out to nonprofits and higher education organizations at no cost or very highly discounted costs. And then our people, which is a huge piece of all of our giving back, have an amazing employee engagement and philanthropic opportunity to give back to things that they are most passionate about. Around the strategic granting area, STEM education is our key focus. It's what I'm most passionate about, and if you heard Ebony Freelix, who's in the back there, talk earlier about, has been, for the last 3 to 4 years, really our focus area where we're doing, doubling down to do a lot of the work. Specifically, we've been working in partnership with San Francisco Unified to help them increase their computer science education, to expose more underrepresented kids to computer science and the STEM field in general. We bring kids into our offices. We part tour guide, part grant maker. I have my little tennis shoes on half the year, taking middle schoolers around to help them understand sort of the opportunities and the potential of working at a company like Salesforce. So we really care passionately about it and believe that in order to have a productive workforce, you need to have an educated workforce, and having the right amount of exposure and opportunity is what's going to lead to having the workforce for tomorrow.
Good morning. So at the Oakland Ed Fund, what we do is we what I tell people is I think I usually have the best job in the world, where I get to work with people who want to come and help Oakland. And my job is to then help them figure out, how do you help well? Sometimes people want to help and it's not so helpful. So as it relates to computer science and computer science education, we have a large partnership with Intel that is really focused at McClymonds High School in West Oakland and Oakland Technical High School. And the work there really is to figure out, how do we build computer science and computer engineering pathways. So about, was it maybe May of 2015, there was a big announcement. The CEO of Intel sort of stood in front of a room full of people at a diversity conference and announced his partnership with Oakland. And he essentially promised kids that graduate from those pathways, from those schools, jobs at Intel. And I intend to do everything I can to hold him to that. And so what that work has really included is it has included work around dual enrollment, so we can make sure that Oakland students are in these pathways who want to go after college credit bearing courses can do that in partnership with our local community college system. It's included teacher education and teacher professional development. It's included resources for additional counselors, for out of class supports. It's included family engagement. It's included the most amazing internship program where we had 30 or so Oakland kids hop on a bus every day, come down to Intel, work with engineers on robotics and coding and real business problems, and really real business problems, but also real problems in their communities. So that type of partnership is the work that we get to do every single day. I'll just end by saying one of the frames through which we look at this work is the following. Every system is exquisitely designed to get the results it produces. So all the results that the host read at the beginning, those are results that the system is designed to produce. And if nothing changes or nothing significant changes, and that system is not intentionally interrupted, you will continue to get those results. Folks have been talking about diversity in tech for I don't know how long, and the results still suck. And so probably because what folks have been doing is it may be necessary, but it clearly is not sufficient. And so we have to do more. We have to do things deeper, better, faster, if we actually want to ensure that we're building the real workforce for tomorrow that we need.
Great, thank you. So as you can see, we have our panelists come from a variety of different perspectives and represent a variety of different stakeholder groups. So our hope is that you are going to be able to come away from this conversation with some tangible examples about how you in your various roles can advocate for computer science education. So let's dive right in to talking more. Claire, if you could walk us through a little bit of the history of how you developed this computer science education plan in Oakland Unified, and any examples of what that plan looks like to share with the audience.
Yeah, so I still identify as a teacher and I still teach one class period a day. So I was teaching at Castlemont High School. Actually, I still do teach at Castlemont High School, which is in East Oakland and has been historically one of our most underserved schools. And I was teaching AP Biology and AP Calculus, but I don't have to sell this to you. In the Bay, when you don't offer kids computer science, it sort of hits you in the face, right? And so I started a computer science program at Castlemont High School where you actually could see the results. So Allison read off those statistics of the number of kids taking computer science. You could see a bump, like a percentage bump from the number of African-American female students in my classroom on the state results. And I was like, this is sick. So I left very briefly. I left the school district to do this as a private sector venture and decided that actually kids are in school districts, and as much as I hated bureaucracy, I should probably go back in one. So I pitched my position to the school district, actually at the same time that we got the Intel funding. So I was like, here's an opportunity. My position's actually paid for through Intel. And from work with the Level Playing Field Institute, we had decided that the single most important thing to catalyze this work would be to have someone holding it. So I guess I sort of stepped up to the plate and said, let me do this. And when I pitched it, I said, like, at the core, like, center focus for this will be equity, right? I've been doing this work in a school that has been underserved. The only other school that has an AP computer science program, concurrently with my program, was Oakland Tech, and the classroom looked nothing like my classroom. My classroom was 70% female. That classroom was 90% male. It was all white and Asian students, and that didn't even make up what Oakland Tech looks like as a school. I was like, so we're gonna either fundamentally redo this or we're not doing this at all, and people at the school district were amenable, which was great. So this sort of coincided with Obama's CS for All initiative, and so we decided, let's take this opportunity, let's write something out, let's codify what we're gonna do as a district. And so we decided by 2020, all students in the district would have access to computer science. Access is not enough, and I'll state what we mean by that in a second. So K through 5, we're looking at exposure. We actually are really invested in the idea of maker spaces and maker education for K to 5, because what we wanna do is use the existing K-5 teaching force. And they're really excited about maker education and design thinking in that way. And to be honest, for some people, like teaching coding is intimidating. And also, I'm not necessarily convinced for K to 5 that screen time is necessarily the only way that we get at the thinking that we want. For 6 through 9, which is what's considered pre-pathway for us, so middle school and then that first year of high school, we have decided that it's critically important that all students take computer science 6th through 9th grade, not as an elective. And actually, when we were first pitching this opportunity to schools, because I mentioned that 6 schools are really taking on this work in earnest, one of the first things that we looked for was who was going to get access to these classes. And so if a school said, we're gonna give it to all 8th graders, we were like, great. If a school said, we're gonna give it to all of, name whatever special population, great. If somebody said, oh my God, we've been looking for an elective for our geometry ready 8th graders, no. Like that's not gonna happen. That's not who we are. That's not what we want baked into the cake from the beginning. So we have chosen sites that are both part of what's known as our elevation network, which are schools who are in need of the most intensive support, and then schools who would do this through an equity framework, including the inclusion of both special populations and newcomers. So I'm super excited about that. It's kind of challenging on the ground in the first week to figure out what that actually looks like, but I'd love that we're working on that challenge real time, as opposed to figuring out how to fit some program that we created back to serve all students. So we're starting from the beginning. 10 through 12, we have a strategy in the district, pathways. So these are college and career aligned, they're industry sector aligned, and they include what Brian was mentioning, so dual enrollment, work-based learning opportunities, internships, etc. So right now we have 3 computer science pathways at 3 very different schools. So one is Oakland Tech, one is Skyline, and one is a small by design school called Coliseum College Prep. We would love to see the proliferation of more computer science academies, but realistically, we want to see computer science infused into more academies. And so what that meant for us was really advocating for all 9th graders to take computer science. And so last year, there were about 20 kids in the district at the 9th grade level, and this year I can say this stat. I do know this one, not final, but we have at least 1,400 9th graders taking computer science across the district. So. And what's remarkable about those classes, so for example, if you go to an Oakland Tech, which I already mentioned, has demographics that we're looking to shift. I'm good with the euphemisms, I promise. Yeah, so I went into a 10th grade classroom and it was 80% young men, right, and 20% young women. But then I went into 3 9th grade classrooms in a row, and it reflects the full diversity of the school because everyone is taking it. So we did that, just for those of you who want to be technical, the way that we got around to actually adding these 9th grade classes across 5 of the 6 comprehensive high schools was that high schools were moving from a 6-period day to an 8-period block. And so basically, being the opportunist that I am and having all principals' numbers on speed dial, I was like, okay, great, you have 2 extra periods. Like, I don't want to take art or music or anything away from your students. This isn't about like circumventing the process and getting in front of another really important content area, but I do know that you have 2 blocks, and I do know all kids deserve this, and I will help you offer it. And schools were really bought into that. And so, opportunity and timing are key on this, and I do understand that. Yeah, so I guess the next level of conversation for us, we did expand AP sections, so I mentioned earlier that we offered 2. Now we have 14 sections of AP across the district, including one at a continuation high school, which is their first ever AP course. I'm really excited about that. But we want to think more critically about how we can put computer science into all of the industry-aligned sectors, because we know that computer science isn't just part of computer science pure pathways in the real world, right? Like every industry sector has some level of technology that's integrated into it, and we want that to be reflected in the education that we're providing to our students. So that's an area of challenge that we're looking for. I think the other really exciting initiative for me on our end is that we just submitted an I3 grant to the federal government. Don't know if we'll get it, although if there's any federal government people in here, we worked really hard. No, but that grant we wrote to combine ethnic studies and computer science. So basically ethnic studies as a way of diversifying pathways, because we know computer science is not a panacea. We know just giving access to these courses is not enough, right? We need to have students who are actualized and understand the systems, the oppressive systems with which they operate, and in which they operate, in order to actually make the best of the education that they're getting and be able to navigate spaces that are not currently designed for them, right? And so we want them to be agents, and we want them to be able to deconstruct those systems and know what they're getting into. So yeah, it's a whirlwind right now. I'm pretty sure that my phone's probably blown up with like, oh my God, robot's not working. Oh my, yeah, but it's a thrill, right? Because last year was all planning, and this year it's on the ground, and thinking about how we can scale further.
Thank you so much for sharing. And you've been a true inspiration in the space, and it's really impressive to see what's been accomplished in a year's time. So thank you. So Brian, can you talk a little bit about the Oakland Education Foundation, how you collaborate with the Oakland Computer Science Plan, and like the high level areas of impact that you're most interested in seeing?
Sure, but before I begin, I just want to say part of the reason I have one of the best jobs is because I get to work with Claire. And every time I talk to her, there's a new like, oh, did you know we're doing this? I'm like, no, but that's amazing. And so we are fortunate to have such incredible skilled leadership of this work in Oakland. We're also fortunate that we have a funding community that is in the work, right? Some people, some large other funders that don't fund Oakland, let's just say that, will come into a school district and say, hey, we want to help you with this. And they'll drop some iPads or some Chromebooks and they'll say, hey, we have this canned curriculum. Will you just teach this curriculum to your kids? And you know, here's $100 and go close the achievement gap and walk away. And that's precisely what we don't have in Oakland. We have an array, a constellation of funders who are in the work deeply. In Oakland, we have currently in middle school, 90% of our African American and Latino students are not proficient at math. We have work to do, real deep work to do. Last year we helped fund a study of our high schools and found that roughly 50% of our high schools, kids were not getting enough instructional time to either A, meet the high school graduation requirements, or B, meet the A to G requirements. So that's why many schools have moved to an 8-period block, right? Because they're like, oh my God, we didn't realize this system that had been set up over the last 15, 20, 25 years was producing this result that meant that mainly black and brown kids were not going to graduate. And if they managed to get lucky enough to somehow get a high school diploma, they were not going to be eligible for CSU or UC admission, right? So we have work to do. And this is my job as the Oakland Public Education Fund, me and my 9 other employees, is to help people both sense make what's happening in public education in Oakland, make sense of the opportunities, and then figure out where the alignment is, and figure out also how do we braid the resources together. So what I often tell people in the public school system is, you have a $683 million budget. Period. I think I'm a pretty good fundraiser. I think I'm a pretty good friend maker. I ain't that good, and so there is no public investment there is no private investment, in public education that will ever surpass the existing public investment in public education. And so We have to be then about leveraging these resources together, right? So that OUSD has said, you know what, yes, we will help you hire more teachers. We will give teachers pathways and opportunities to actually do a transfer from one area of specialty into computer science. A funder then comes along and says, great, we will help pay for, if you need materials and equipment, we'll do that. If you need advocacy around opening up dual enrollment sections, we're happy to sort of stand there with you and say, Intel's ready to make a big investment, but we're only gonna do it if you guys get your act together and do dual enrollment, county board or whatever group you're trying to lobby with to do that. We will fund leadership. We will support investments in training and so on. We'll fund opportunities for students to go and learn and get connected. We will give employee volunteer time. We will give products. So it actually becomes a basket of things, a basket of resources that come together in private partnerships that actually help the public agencies do more. And when that's what's happening in Oakland. So whether it is Intel, whether it's SAP, whether it's Cisco, whether it's Facebook doing some stuff out at Castlemont, we're trying to figure out where are the partnerships with folks who actually say they want to help. Then let's go. Then let's get to work together. And the expectation is that don't show up just for a year, because again, we're not gonna make a change to that 90% number in a year. It took a long time to create that system. It's going to take a little bit of time to unpack it and change it. The work that Claire is doing by opening up computer science at a school like Oakland Tech, which is incredibly diverse, but for decades has had a top flight engineering program that has been essentially closed to Black and brown kids, right? By design, it has been essentially closed to Black and brown kids because of the prerequisite requirements that were only offered at 1 or 2 middle schools, which had low enrollments of those students, right? And so opening it up and saying, nope, you all can do this. That's radically transformative, right? It is terrifying for some, right? I don't know what's gonna happen. There'll be all kinds of new opportunities that emerge out of that, but we are gonna go forward and do it because that is the right and just thing to do for the kids and communities of Oakland. So that's my job, is both to figure out how do I get more people like you to come on up to Oakland to both see the work we're doing, but also partner with us in helping to make this work better. And then also thinking through where are the places and spaces where we aren't yet, right? So right now we're starting to do a pretty big push on middle school math. For many reasons, both the numbers I cited, but also it's pretty clear that if that math is the only subject I know of where people who are college educated, really good professionally, brilliant leaders in their fields will come and say, you know, I'm just not very good at math. You're like, what? Wait, what? What are you talking about? And so we know that has real impacts on foreclosing opportunities, both in high school and in college and in career. And so we want to try to interrupt that. So that's some of the work that we're doing. It's great. It's fun. Oakland's beautiful. It's sunny all the time. So y'all should come on up.
Thanks so much, Brian. Can you talk a little bit, one quick follow-up question. When industry partners come to you and express interest in partnering with Oakland, can you talk us through a little bit about how does that process work? And what are your, I guess, first pieces of advice? I've heard make a serious long-term commitment. Maybe a couple other pieces of advice that you would give industry partners. Sure.
So when industry partners come and talk to me about wanting to join the work in Oakland, my first conversation is actually with Claire. Right? It's to say, we've got this partner who's interested. Tell me how they can help you. Right? And really, this is what we need from you. And some folks are like, I can't do that. Okay, that's totally cool. There are many other districts in California who I'm sure might be happy to take your money and your support. But we need this, right? 100% of the time though, the partner's like, okay, let's think about it, right? Because usually people are coming to this work because they want to help. And they may come in because their boss's boss said we should do these 2 things. But the truth is, they know what their organizations actually have capacity to do. And it actually needs to be a conversation, a dialogue. It took us 6 months to essentially get the Intel partnership together. Most of the other partnerships, it could take 6 months to a year to 18 months to get it together. And that's okay, because to me, it's much more important that we get it right. So that way your organizations can feel and believe that we're actually making a meaningful impact, and it doesn't feel on either side like it's a burden. Now, there are always challenges in the middle, right? So with the internship program, for a while, we were struggling to figure out why aren't we getting more kids to take this opportunity up? And because initially we're like, we should get 50 kids, and then we got like 10, and we're like, no, let's we can do better than that. And so it took us a minute. And so one of the things that came out of that was we actually need to have students talking to other students about this opportunity, because for many young people, it's really scary, right? Because they in their head have heard the rumors of their supposed inferiority to learning these things. And so actually having other students or friends say, you know, actually, I went and I learned coding. It was kind of amazing and spectacular, and they paid really well, and the lunches were free and really good, will go a long way to helping young people say, okay, I can do that too. We didn't know that for sure, right? So my point saying all that is it really starts as a conversation about what is needed in order to advance this agenda in Oakland Public Schools. What is your capacity as an organization? For some people, it really is just money. I can give you just money. We can't give you a bunch of time. We don't do that. Cool. I'm always happy to take your money. But for most folks, it's really some combination of money and people time. And for most organizations, they have corporate social responsibility goals. I'm clear about that. Claire's clear about that. So we want to help you reach your CSR goals in a way that also directly benefits the kids and communities of Oakland in a way that's going to be sustainable for the long term. And the third piece is we want this to be fun, right? It's actually really important that these are hard, sticky, difficult, knotty problems that we're trying to work with, and there's a way in which that work can just feel like, oh man, another problem thing didn't go right, and it's already hard enough. We don't have to sort of turn it into some long, drawn out, painful affair. And so we do a lot of things to actually figure out how can we get your employees to come over and actually spend time seeing students learning well. Because for your employees, that's actually really powerful, because they remember what it was like to be there. Or maybe they don't remember what it's like to be there anymore, but it's like, oh man, we're going to help these kids get here, and that is a good and wonderful thing. So, to answer your question, Doc?
Very well. Thank you very much. So, Nikki, as an industry representative, can you describe a little bit about why Salesforce is interested in computing education, and a little bit about how you tend to work with different stakeholder groups, so nonprofits, school districts, et cetera?
Sure. Yeah, so if most of you heard Ebony's presentation, the plenary this morning, we really want to build a productive workforce. We want to have a nice community where people are educated and diverse, and lots of rainbows, lots of like stars, and yay, happy world, right? To do that, to be able to have a company like Salesforce, which is a growing company in the tech field, one of the fastest growing companies, shout out to us. No offense to Microsoft, this is a nice little dig, but we got some stuff going on in San Francisco as well. We know that it starts with education. So if you work backwards from the first day working at Salesforce to what it takes to get in the building, you know that you need to have that educational background. We know that kids, we just went over all the statistics, and having math as a critical piece, we know that if you don't have higher level math in middle school, that the gates are closed to you to be able to be successful, to have a STEM career in the future. So that is our focus. That is why we are passionate about this work. How we work with partners, like I mentioned before, we have a long-standing relationship now with San Francisco Unified. It's a three-way partnership, a little bit of a dance with the mayor's office and the school district and ourselves. And we work closely to come up with a plan to really support the school district to do what they do best. They knew that they needed to improve their middle school computer science program. They created a board amendment to require computer science K through 12, or pre-K through 12 actually, and we're there to support that effort. We provide both funding. We also provide our human capital by volunteering in the schools. We have adopted or circled 20 schools in the San Francisco Unified School District. And then we also bring students in. As I mentioned, I'm part-time tour guide, so that middle schoolers and high schoolers, but specifically starting in the middle school to kind of spark that interest, really can see themselves in a place like Salesforce. And that part is really critical because at middle school, you're not quite thinking about like what your job is going to be. You're not really thinking about what your career path is. But if you see people and you can talk to people about what it takes to get there, and the great thing about Salesforce is we have a really diverse employee group that is have very different pathways in terms of how they got there. We have a lot of computer science majors, but we have philosophy majors that are also doing coding as well. And so it's more about the mindset and getting them exposed and saying, yes, you too can be at a place like Salesforce. In terms of the other partnerships we have and the work that we do with funding partners like Code.org or Black Girls Code, we identify organizations or partners that can help scale and bring computer science to more kids, both in and out of school time, right? Because if we want to have kids to have exposure, obviously working in the schools is going to be the #1 place, because hopefully all kids are in school. But there are a lot of opportunities out of school time as well. And so how do we leverage those partnerships to really get more girls in tech? So we recently worked with, like I mentioned, Black Girls Code, but Girls Who Code, and other sort of non-traditional groups to get them thinking about exposure and experience in computer science. So I have conversations with organizations all the time about how do you get kids excited, and what are those levers that will really sort of spark kids to maybe change their pathway.
Great, thank you. So this question will be for the full panel, so feel free to just jump in. So what are some of the challenges that you've seen in working across stakeholder groups? So whether it's school districts, city, local government, industry, what are some challenges that tend to come up in trying to develop those collaborative partnerships?
Well, since I have the mic, I will just answer that.
Go for it.
So I will share. So the San Francisco Unified School District Partnership is probably a really great example of that, because it is a lot of different entities and they work very differently. But the key to a partnership like the mayor's office, the school district, and Salesforce is really leveraging everyone's strengths. We know that the school district knows education. We know that the mayor's office and that team is really passionate about providing opportunities to the city and can help open up particular doors that kind of undo some blocks that might be presented. We know that we move fast. We are a 17-year-old company that still works very much like a startup. We fail fast, we move quickly, we try things, and it's okay to like kind of move quickly to do that. So what we needed to do through this dance of this three-way partnership is really understand everyone's strengths, really keep the lines of communication open. I think that's probably the #1 thing. And then really move forward knowing that everyone has the best intentions to try to get this work done.
Great, thanks.
2 challenges come to mind pretty quickly for me. One is around staffing. So computer science is not currently a credential area, so there's no single subject credential in computer science. There is a supplementary credential if somebody has a single subject, or somebody can get something that's called a CTE, or a career in technical education. So we have 2 teachers out of the 34 in Oakland Unified who are leaving industry to come to us, martyrs, if you will, No, and I actually don't want a whole bunch of those people, to be really clear, because I actually don't want people taking on that mindset necessarily. It's been, for us, our strategy to take people who have been in the classroom in other capacities and who know how to facilitate student learning and help them learn to facilitate computer science. And in many cases, that's them learning alongside their students, and that's a really beautiful thing. But that also, I mean, think about in your professional experience, right? If you are poised as an expert or even just some level of authority, and then you're being asked to give that up, right? And learn alongside people who are your subordinates or your students, right? It definitely takes a lot more. I wish I had a therapy background some days, you know? That's like, you can do this. There's a lot of cards being written and snacks being delivered, but it's good. It's good. We were able to get 34 people. And that a lot of that was just like me standing in front of rooms of 1,000 educators and being like, you know, someone who wants to teach computer science in Oakland, right? You want to. So it was a national recruiting effort, definitely a hustle for all of last year. And I think as we expand, we have to become like even more creative about how we're going through that. The second challenge that comes up for us all the time is in this internship and work-based learning opportunity. So realistically, a lot of the technical skills that are helpful for companies as far as internships are concerned are still relatively high level, right? Yeah, I see some nods. Okay. So I can't send a relatively untrained high schooler to a company and have them be productive or useful for that organization. And so we're trying to think really critically around like what certifications would students need in order to be useful, or how can you all structure a work-based learning experience such that students get something out of it, you get something out of it, and it may not be the same sort of technical expertise that a college junior might bring. I guess actually the corollary to that as well is that we're kind of starting at ground zero at like multiple levels right now, right? Like the 9th graders are starting computer science, the 6th graders are starting computer science, and yes, like what we're asking of those students is slightly different, but at a fundamental level, it's all kind of intro. And so how do we become dynamic with our pipeline such that the 9th grade doesn't stay static as these kids who have come up through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade with significant experience? Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be constantly shifting. It's going to be constantly dynamic. We have a lot of kids who are doing things outside of the school day. As Nikki said, for me, the school day is the intervention. Like, it needs to happen in school, and it needs to happen for everyone. But what's really amazing is that in Oakland, we have a ton of partners. So Smash Academy, Hidden Genius Project, Kino Labs, the Glover Center. I personally sent 6 students to Facebook to learn virtual reality for 7 weeks this summer, right? So these kids are coming in with significant skills. And so how are we responsive to their needs at the same time of not being overwhelming for the kid who's never had access or exposure and doesn't have a computer at home? So there's a lot of tensions. There's a lot of balancing. I think we're trying to do a really good job of staying in the data and looking at metrics that make sense in order to measure what kids are getting and what kids still have gaps on. But then we're also in conversation. I spend a lot of time out with tech companies saying, like, what would you need out of a high school intern so that I know how to prepare them? So yeah, those are some salient challenges. There's more. We could talk.
So really quickly, one, I think, thank you, helpful sign. Thank you. So one of the challenges is usually when we start these partnerships, we have to have what my grandmother would have called a bit of a come to Jesus talk about the metrics that you all want, because OUSD tracks thousands of them. Some of them are required by the state. Some of them are actually just good educational things. And within that basket of knowledge is probably more than enough data to help tell the story. And sometimes folks come in like, yeah, but I want to know this new thing. And I often say, no, that's not how this works, right? We're going to track metrics that are meaningful to educators, because that knowledge will then help them refine the work, not just some new random thing on the side, because it's important to your board who may or may not be actually made up of educators, which reaches the second problem, which is many folks, many organizations, many corporations who start in this work, the people who they have leading it on the ground are not folks who know and speak education. They're brilliant engineers, brilliant business people, brilliant sales and marketing. They are terrific, wonderful, warm-hearted human beings who, when they walk into a public school system and say, well, we sent the check last week, how come you guys haven't started the work? Well, here's the deal. and so understanding that actually Claire needs time to get the right people hired and trained, that it takes time to figure out how we design an internship program that's in alignment with state law and ed code and just good educational practice. So the extent to which you can coordinate your work on the ground, whether if you've got someone who you can pull from the organization who actually speaks, understands education, you hire people that come from education fields, that way they have credibility with folks. Like, I'm pretty sure if I walked into your engineering department and said, so I've got some ideas about how you can redo this user interface design, they would probably smile and nod, if I'm lucky, and ignore me, right? So likewise, you want to build your teams thinking about what is the type of work that you want to do and make sure that those folks have experience doing that work, right? I know that sounds like a radical idea, but it's actually it's actually not. So I'm going to quit talking because the lady with the sign is getting increasingly more of that. So there we go.
Thanks. So yes, we're running short on time. We could keep this conversation going for much longer. I wish we could. Just last question, what's one thing that our audience members could do to advocate for computer science education, either locally, statewide, or nationally? One thing.
Engage, be a part of the conversation. There's definitely lots of conversations going. So when asked, say yes, we do need more computer science.
This is admittedly biased. I'm gonna throw that out there, but every school district needs somebody holding this work specifically. And my position is sponsored by Intel, but I'm sure other positions could be sponsored by other people. Anyway.
Join up. Like, lots of folks have been talking about this, and people sit in the sidelines say, man, it's a shame we don't have any people of color in this pool. Then you should do something about that, right? You should do something. Oakland has 51,000 students in it. San Francisco has 55, 56,000. I don't know how much San Jose has. LA Unified's got a million or so. Like, there are the bodies that you want to hire are already existing in our public school systems today. And if you do nothing different, then you'll be having this exact same conversation 15, 20, 25 years from now. And I don't know how you could tolerate that. I certainly couldn't. So get up, get engaged, and join, and get in the fight.
Great piece of advice. Thank you. So I think really quickly, I think we have time for some questions, and then we can close out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
This is for Claire. I was just wondering, what credits do they earn for the CSR?
So great question. The question was around credits earned. It's still a G elective. I actually am part of an advocacy push with BORS, which is the academic regions for the UC system, to change it. The conversation was initially to a C math, but now has moved to D lab science, because D should be rewritten to include engineering anyway. So, but it's G.
That was literally my question and comment. When you ask for one thing that people can do, it is persuade the UCs to
Yes.
CS as not.
If you want to join me in that, it's a fun time.
Yes.
Two pieces of information. The first being AT&T has a education funding initiative, Aspire. So if you go to att.com and search on AT&T Aspire, please go in there and see what you qualify for in terms of funding. There's $350 million set aside to take care of the AT&T Aspire funding opportunity. And I know
Thanks.
Thank you so much. So I apologize. I just got the let it go sign. So for any of you that have additional questions, please feel free to ask our panelists.
And thank you to all of our
Thank you.
speakers for this discussion. Another round of applause here. So our next panel is going to be starting promptly in 10 minutes at 10:05. If you can take the time to transition for the next breakout room, you can find what you registered for on your name tag under session 2. That will indicate the next panel.